The Man Beyond the Fence. It happened back in the winter of 2019. I was living in a rural area of Virginia at the time, not too far from the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was one of those places where your nearest neighbor is a good half-mile down the road, and the nights are so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat if you stand outside long enough. I had just moved there a few months earlier. I wanted to get away from everything, the noise, the people, the stress of the city. I'd found a small rental farmhouse on a couple of acres of land, surrounded by trees and a broken-down fence that ran along the back of the property. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. I worked remotely, so I spent most days inside, but I always made it a point to take a walk before bed just to clear my head, usually around midnight or later when everything outside felt still. The first night it happened, I remember the air being cold enough to sting my nose. I had walked down the gravel driveway out to the edge of the property where the fence disappeared, into the woods. I stopped there, hands in my pockets, just listening. That's when I saw him, a man standing on the other side of the fence. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't walking or moving. He was just standing there facing me. I couldn't make out his face, but he was tall, lean, and dressed in a long, dark coat. At first I thought maybe it was a neighbor, or maybe someone cutting through the property. But when I took a step forward, he didn't move. He didn't say anything. I called out, "Hey, you okay?" No response. The next thing I remember was turning around and heading back inside, locking the door behind me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a hunter, maybe just a lost hiker, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't supposed to be there. The next night I didn't go for my walk. I sat by the window instead, staring out into the darkness, waiting. At exactly 12:37 a.m., I saw movement near the fence line. It was him again. Same dark coat, same stillness. He was facing the house this time, not moving, not making a sound, just standing there. I didn't sleep that night. The following day, I walked the property line in daylight, checking the fence, looking for footprints. I didn't find anything. No broken branches, no tracks, nothing to show that anyone had been there. For a few nights after that, nothing happened. I convinced myself it had been a trick of the light, or maybe just my mind playing with me after too many late nights and too much coffee. But then, a week later, it happened again. This time, I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard something. A tapping sound. Not at the front door. Not at the back door. At my bedroom window. I sat up, heart racing, and waited. Another tap. Soft. Deliberate. I got out of bed and walked slowly to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek out. He was there, standing beyond the fence in the same spot as before, but this time, his head was tilted up, as if he was staring directly at me. Even though I couldn't see his face, I knew. He was watching me. I didn't sleep for days after that. I started keeping the porch lights on, something I hadn't done before. I bought motion sensor cameras and set them up around the house. But every time I checked the footage, there was nothing. Weeks went by without incident. I started to relax again, thinking maybe whatever it was had finally stopped. Until one night in February. I was working late, sitting at my desk in the living room, when I noticed something on the camera feed. Movement. I stared at the screen. There, by the fence line, barely visible in the shadows, was the man. He was standing perfectly still as always, but this time there was something different. Something about the way he was standing, almost leaning forward slightly, like he was trying to hear something. I turned off the feed and walked to the front window. I couldn't see him from there. I walked to the back door, turned on the floodlight. Nothing. The next night I stayed up again watching. Nothing. A week passed, then another. I stopped checking the cameras. One night, close to midnight, I went outside to lock up the shed. I had almost forgotten about him. But when I turned to go back inside, I froze. He was standing at the fence again, closer this time. I couldn't move. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Or rather, I stared at him because I still couldn't make out his face. Then he raised his hand. A slow, deliberate wave. I backed into the house, locked the door, and didn't leave the house for days after that. I started asking around in town, told a few people what I'd seen, half expecting them to think I was crazy, but a couple of folks nodded quietly when I mentioned the man beyond the fence. They told me stories. People around here had seen him too, mostly late at night. Sometimes by the road, sometimes near the woods. One woman swore she saw him standing outside her bedroom window once, but when her husband got up to check, there was nothing there. Said the same thing. He never spoke. He never moved. He just watched. The last time I saw him was in March. It was just after 2 a.m. I had woken up from a nightmare and gone to the kitchen for a glass of water. I didn't look outside at first, but something made me glance toward the window above the sink. He was there, standing at the fence, closer than ever before. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my ears. And then, slowly, he turned away. He walked back into the woods. I never saw him again after that night, but sometimes when I take the trash out late or when I step onto the porch for some air, I catch myself glancing toward the fence, just to make sure he's not there. The Watcher in the Woods. A couple of years ago, when I was still living in a small town in North Carolina, something happened to me that I haven't been able to forget. Even now, every time I walk outside at night, a part of me looks over my shoulder. Back then, I was working late shifts at a distribution warehouse about 30 minutes outside of town. I used to take the back roads home, winding through the woods and farmland because it was faster and there was barely any traffic. One night in late November, I left work around 1:30 in the morning. It was cold, crisp, and dead silent outside. I remember how clear the sky was that night. You could see every single star, the kind of night you'd appreciate, if not for the uneasiness that creeps in when you're alone. I hopped in my old pickup truck, cranked the heat up, and started driving home. The back roads were empty, as usual, nothing but trees, fences, and the occasional mailbox. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something strange. On the side of the road near the edge of the woods was a figure. At first, I thought it might be a deer. But as I got closer, I realized it was a person, someone standing just off the shoulder right next to the tree line. They were facing the road, standing completely still. I slowed down slightly as I passed, trying to get a better look without stopping. It was a man, tall, maybe 6 foot or more, wearing what looked like a long, dark coat or jacket. His face was hidden in the shadows. I drove past and glanced in the rearview mirror. He hadn't moved an inch. I shook it off. People sometimes walked along these roads. Maybe he was hitchhiking, maybe something else. I didn't want to stop in the middle of nowhere and ask. But a few miles down the road, I saw him again, same man, same long coat, same still posture, except there was no way he could have gotten ahead of me. I hadn't passed any side roads, no driveways, nothing. That's when my stomach dropped. I kept driving, a little faster this time. Another 5 minutes passed. The winding road curved along a small hill and through a thick patch of woods. I glanced to the side. He was there again, standing just beyond the trees, facing the road. I didn't know what to think. My brain kept trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe there were multiple people. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But my gut told me otherwise. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I felt that same cold, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I sat in the truck for a minute, headlights off, listening. The night was dead quiet. I got out and hurried to the door, locking it behind me. My house was small, 1 story, with big windows in the front living room. I didn't sleep well that night. Every sound outside made me sit up. Every creak of the old floorboard sounded like footsteps. The next night, I worked late again. Same routine. Drove home down the same back roads, and there he was. Different spot. Same man. This time, I didn't slow down. I kept my eyes straight ahead and drove past. But when I got home and looked out the window before going to bed, I thought, I saw movement in the tree line across the road, just a shadow. A few days later, I mentioned it to one of my coworkers. He gave me a look and told me something that still gives me chills. He said, "You know, you're not the first person to see him. People around here call him the Watcher. He shows up on back roads, always at night, always staring." He told me stories of other drivers seeing the same figure, sometimes right outside their houses, sometimes in their yards at night. But when they went out to check, no one was there. I stopped taking the back roads for a while after that. But one night, maybe 2 weeks later, I was coming home late again. I had taken the main highway this time, thinking it was safer. As I pulled into my driveway, something in my headlights caught my eye. There, at the edge of my yard near the tree line, was a tall figure, same coat, same stillness. I stared for what felt like forever, and then without moving, he seemed to fade back into the darkness. Since that night, I've never seen him again. But I don't take back roads anymore, and I never ever look too long into the woods at night.